Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the most comprehensive Hindu analysis on YouTube. Let's start the discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen 7 articles which are most important as far as today's current affairs are concerned. Let's cover these topics in complete detail so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. But before we start, I have something very special for Unacademy is marking its 10th anniversary. On this special occasion, we are presenting a very exciting event tomorrow at 7 p.m. And I request all of you to take part in this celebration because there will be many surprises, big reveals, something that could benefit the IAS aspirants. So do ensure that you tune into this event live at 7 p.m. on the UPSC Unstoppables channel by Unacademy. And please don't forget to click on notify me so that the moment we go live, you will receive a notification and you can join us as we mark the 10th anniversary of Unacademy. And as I said, there is something very big which will be revealed tomorrow. And on this occasion, we are bringing out few videos with the theme being number 10. So yesterday, Mukesh Jha sir has covered a very important and useful video for prelims, 10 critically endangered species in news in 2025. The video is already live on our channel. Do ensure you catch this video as well. And if you want the PDF of this session, please join our official Telegram channel. After the session ends, we will be uploading the PDF over here. So let's get started and look at the first article. On page number 8, there is a column written by Pankaj Saran. And who is Pankaj Saran? Pankaj Saran was India's former ambassador to Russia. He later served as India's deputy national security advisor. So he is India's former deputy NSA and as well as the former Indian ambassador to Russia. So based on his incredible experience, he is evaluating the status of India-Russia relations following the 23rd annual summit between the two countries. This article presents a very insightful overview with critical analysis of the recent visit of Russian President Putin to India. So, who better than Pankaj Saran to provide a breakdown of the outcome? The analysis, the opinions can be very helpful for you in writing your mains answers. See, we've already covered this topic. You know all the facts, all the key takeaways, and the agreements. We've discussed that enough number of times. But I'll just focus on the analysis of Pankaj Saran, which can be very useful for you in your mains examination. Of course, the writer is focusing on the Ukraine war and how it has impacted India's relations with Russia and India's relations with Western countries. But the very fact that Putin brought along Kirill Dmitriev as part of his delegation, that itself is a clear sign that Russia hopes India to play a big role in bringing the war in Ukraine to an end. And who is Kirill Dmitriev? Why was he part of Putin's delegation? Kirill Dmitriev is a very close confidant of Russian President Putin, who's the lead negotiator with United States and Ukraine to end the war in Ukraine. So US envoys Steve Witkoff, who's the special envoy of President Trump, and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, who's known for his mediation role in global geopolitics. They have been meeting with the Russian envoy Kirill Dmitriev, and they have been trying to negotiate the 28-point Ukraine peace plan, which has been pushed by Donald Trump. So the fact that Putin brought his lead negotiator as part of his delegation to India, it clearly signals that Russia is open to allowing India to play a role, a positive role, to help in mediating the end of the conflict. Of course, Russia wants to end the war on its own terms. And Russia is, as of now, not showing that eagerness to settle for the deal which is being pushed by the US, especially given the fact that European countries are against the proposal And that is where the challenge lies for India. The real dilemma for India lies in the fact that we are being torn between three different power centers. As far as the Ukraine conflict is concerned and its implications are concerned, India is facing a triple dilemma here, a trilemma of sorts, where on one side, we are expected by Europe to meet their interests. Whereas, of course, we can't compromise our ties with Russia, given that Russia is a all-weather strategic partner. And US has a different set of expectations from India. For example, President Trump has been pressurizing India to stop the oil imports from Russia and has even levied a penalty tariff on India, bringing the total American tariffs on Indian exports to 50%. On the other hand, Europe has always been critical of India bypassing Western sanctions and India almost siding with Russia with the Ukraine conflict. So, Europe is largely against the peace proposal that Donald Trump is pushing. Why? Because Trump's peace plan almost makes a concession for Russia as far as the territory which it has annexed is concerned. The 28-point peace plan, if you look at the details of it, the United States is showing that willingness to make a compromise with Russia to end this war. And the compromise involves Ukrainian territory, Ukrainian sovereignty. Trump is pushing Zelensky to agree to this plan, which would allow Russia to formally annex almost 20% of Ukrainian territory. And this would be a significant victory for Russia. This would establish Russia as a key geopolitical power in the Eurasia and Eastern Europe region. That obviously threatens the other European countries, the key EU members, Germany, France, Italy, and others, and even United Kingdom. Their main concern is that Trump's peace proposal is making a compromise with Russia and strengthening Russia's position. And that threatens European security, Europe's larger interests. So there is a lot of opposition coming from European capitals against Trump's peace plan. In fact, yesterday, Zelensky met with European leaders, Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, and the German Chancellor in London. And they've all expressed support to Zelensky. And European countries are committed to Ukraine that they will not allow Ukrainian territory to be compromised. So, this is where India has to navigate a very difficult diplomatic challenge because Europe is a key partner for India in terms of trade, defense, technology. Same with US. US is very crucial for India's economic interests, for defense and strategic interests. And same with Russia. So for India, there is no easy choice. India has to navigate this diplomatic challenge which is present. And we need to find a way where we will be able to convince Russia, try and push Russia to talk to Ukraine, try to settle the conflict. At the same time, ensure that our ties with Europe and ties with US is protected. And that is, I think, the biggest challenge which the writer is also talking about. Pankaj Saran, he strongly feels that the India-Russia summit, the 23rd annual summit that took place, it has helped in re-engineering the India-Russia relations. Is calling the recent meeting between Putin and Modi as a re-engineering of India-Russia ties. Because India-Russia today really diversifying the partnership. Remember, we spoke about the economic ties and the economic partnership that India Russia are trying to build. They've set a very ambitious goal to increase their trade volume to more than $100 billion by 2030. They're looking to push other products which can be exported to each other's countries. India is looking to push products from MSME industry, from agriculture sector, from IT, pharma, and textiles, whereas Russia is looking to push fertilizers and agricultural products and other commodities for which there is a requirement in the Indian market. There has been discussion on improving connectivity to promote trade, a commitment to establish the Eastern Maritime Corridor connecting Chennai with Vladivostok. Then Russia's willingness to work with India and allow India to play a bigger role in the Arctic and establish the Northern Sea route. which will help India establish its presence and influence in this region and exploit the shorter route between the eastern and western hemispheres. The writer talks about the progress made in the defense sector. We've all known that Russia is a key supplier of arms and weapons, the topmost supplier. And the fact that Russia is open and willing to supply cutting edge weapons to India, including the S-500 air defense systems, the Sukhoi 57 fighter jets, and completing the delivery of the remaining units of S-400 missile systems, that shows the promise that holds in this relationship. And the writer says that this meeting between Putin and Modi has re engineered the relationship. Because now the focus is not just India's procurement of oil or India's procurement of arms and weapons. It's not just a buyer seller relationship anymore. Russia is looking for participation from India. Russia is looking for Indian investments, especially in its far east region, in Siberia, where the region is underpopulated but blessed with resources. Russia wants foreign investors to play a bigger role, especially from countries like India. In fact, there are a few Indian companies which already have investments in the hydrocarbon resources of the Far East. There are few Indian companies which operate a coal mine and which have established their industries in the Siberia region of Russia. So Russia wants more such Indian investments and a more diversified trade between India and Russia to strengthen this partnership. So that is what is unique about this visit, that Russia is looking at India as a critical partner for Russia's power projection. But the main roadblock would be the concerns of Europe, the concerns of Europe with regard to Russia's aggression, and how India would balance this without compromising its ties with European countries. As I said, European countries have already labeled India as a laundromat. They accused India of bypassing the sanctions and buying Russian oil, refining it into various petrochemical products, and re exporting it back into the European market. But India rejects these allegations because this is pure hypocrisy. Let me tell you, Europe still remains one of the biggest buyers of Russian natural gas, even today. Even though they themselves have imposed sanctions since 3 years, Europe still continues to rely on Russian gas. Recently, European Union has brought out an agreement to stop Russian gas imports by 2027, which means for at least another 2 years, Europe will continue to buy Russian gas when they are pointing fingers at India and accusing India of bypassing their sanctions. So India has been prioritizing its energy interests and its overall strategic interests. There's nothing wrong with that because Europe is being hypocritical. When Europe itself has the dependency looking after its energy interests, why shouldn't India? So this visit by Putin has helped re-engineer the partnership, diversify the relations, focus on other key areas where improvements can be done. And in return, India can contribute positively to help in ending the war in Ukraine. For example, there are reports that India is trying to invite Ukrainian President Zelensky for a follow on visit. Right after Putin's visit, India wants to follow this up with a visit from Zelensky. And India is clearly projecting itself as a potential mediator to work out the peace plan between Ukraine and Russia. And this would impress Washington officials as well. It would impress Donald Trump. It would essentially project India as a peace broker, which can help satisfy the interests of the US and Russia at the same time. Because there are very few countries which can talk to both US and Russia at the same time, and India is one amongst them. So, this re engineering that you got to see during Putin's visit is a clear hallmark of a very strong relationship between India and Russia. It's a time tested partnership, as experts are calling it. So, with this understanding, you can take up this mains practice question and try to present your argument on why the 23rd India Russia summit led to a re engineering of India Russia relations. What was so different? What was so unique about the visit? What challenges are still present for India? How can India navigate them? So, if you can present your viewpoints, your analytical viewpoints, that would add the much needed weight for this answer. So, please take up this question for your answer writing practice. Moving on, we have an editorial on page number 8 that focuses on prison reforms, especially for those who are disabled, prisoners who are disabled, who have been detained, who have been arrested, who are serving their sentence. Because those with disabilities, they face many challenges. especially when they are a convict or when they have been detained on certain charges. The jail life is difficult in itself, but those with disabilities face a much bigger challenge. The topic is in news because recently the Supreme Court has issued a directive to the central government. The Supreme Court has directed the government to ensure that prisoners with disabilities are given all the facilities that are needed to make it easier for them when they are serving their jail sentence. Now, if you look at the subject of prison management, this is a state subject. It is the state governments which are essentially responsible for managing prisons as per the division of subjects under Schedule 7, right? If you look at the union, state, and concurrent list, management of prison reforms falls under the state government's jurisdiction. It's a state subject. But however, the center plays a role as it comes out with a model law, comes out with a model prison law and policy and regulations, which are meant to be followed by the state governments. The center provides the guidance to the states to manage prisons. Now, if you look at how prisons are managed in the country, there are multiple problems. Very serious concerns are present, especially during colonial times and even in post colonial times. There is a practice of using prison for furthering the social divisions which are present in the society. There is ample evidence to indicate that, be it in colonial India or post colonial India, within our prisons, there is discrimination by the jail authorities against the vulnerable classes, such as Dalits, members from tribal community, women. See, they might have committed a crime, they may have been convicted, they may be serving a jail term, but they still deserve their basic human rights. Because right to life with dignity under Article 21 is something that's available to all the citizens and even non citizens. And this applies to prisoners as well. But when there is such active discrimination on the grounds of caste, gender, and one's place of birth or one's social status, this becomes gross injustice, which is being met uh, to these prisoners, and that too under a state control itself. And in a way, state has enabled such discrimination to continue. For example, studies have shown how prisoners from um, scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, they are forced by the prison authorities to clean the toilets, which is a continuation of the social evil that you see with regard to caste system. Then, if you look at how prisoners from upper castes are treated, they're often treated as more privileged, given better facilities, whereas those from the Dalit community, those who are tribals, they are often discriminated. And reports indicate they even face more torture as well within the prison system, either from other criminals and convicts or from the jail authorities. Women have been at the receiving end as well. And the Supreme Court has taken notice of this, not for the first time. The Supreme Court has directed the center and the states to ensure that basic rights are guaranteed to all the prisoners, irrespective of their social status, irrespective of the caste they belong to or the gender they belong to. If you look at the 2016 law, Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, there is a specific provision under the law that recognizes the rights of prisoners who are suffering from disabilities. For example, there could be prisoners suffering from old age, from conditions like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, or prisoners who have been decapitated, who have lost a limb or a hand, whose mobility has been affected, or prisoners who might be suffering from very serious health conditions. For them, even day to day life becomes challenging and there is no support for them. Accessing toilet or doing day to day chores becomes near impossible for those prisoners with disabilities. So, such discrimination cannot be allowed to continue. While delivering justice is necessary and ensuring adequate punishment is delivered is necessary, it doesn't mean that the state creates a new sort of discrimination within the prisons where prisoners are subjected to such atrocities. And that is what the Supreme Court has taken note of. This is a trend which was common in colonial era. This should not continue in post colonial India. That's the point the Supreme Court also has made. And that's why it has issued the directive to ensure that the rights that are guaranteed to those with disabilities is ensured even in our prisons. So this will require directions coming from the central government to the states and ensuring that it is enforced and implemented on the ground. So this is a human rights issue, and Supreme Court's intervention was much needed to protect the guaranteed rights for prisoners with disabilities. So this is what we learn from this key topic. It can be important for social justice, it can be relevant for polity and governance, for internal security, for police reforms as well, and it can be relevant in public administration if PUBAD is your optional. So please take up this mains practice question. Prison manuals must mandate disability related facilities. Discuss. You need to discuss this in the context of the recent directive of the Supreme Court. How prison manuals need to be updated. What guidelines can center issue? What can the states do to enforce this directive? Why it is important to protect these basic rights of prisoners, especially those suffering from disabilities. Highlight the discrimination that prisoners face, especially when they are disabled or when they come from vulnerable classes, and make a strong argument that it is essential to protect the rights of prisoners with disabilities. So please take up this question for your answer writing practice. Next, on page 9, another important article written by the Chinese Consul General in Kolkata. So, a senior Chinese diplomat has written this column in the Hindu, focusing on the future prospects for India China relations. So, when you have such an article written by senior diplomats, right, not just from India, but from other countries as well, those articles become very important because the insight you get is something which is very unique, which you can directly try to inculcate into your answers. So, the Chinese Consul General in Kolkata is talking about how the Indian elephant, the Chinese dragon, they can dance together in step. They can perform a tango and ensure that the region and the world remain stable and progresses together while India China both continue to rise together. Because generally, the assumption is India China are natural competitors. Given the nature of our border dispute, the history of our conflicts, given Chinese aggression against India, and our economic competition and strategic competition, it's assumed that India China will be rivals, that India China will always be competitors and arch rivals. But the Chinese Consul General takes a different viewpoint. Because, see, when it comes out from a senior Chinese official, you can fairly assume that this is likely the thinking of the Communist Party of China as well. Given how authoritarian Chinese political structure is, Chinese officials would never dare step out of the party line. So, whatever they write in newspapers across the world, whatever they speak, whatever is their viewpoint, it reflects the thinking of Chinese leadership within the Communist Party. So that's why I'm saying take this article seriously because it shows that China is quite keen to engage with India, work with India. Because one thing which is common between us is the need for development. See, we may have hundreds of differences. Politically, our systems are entirely different. While China remains authoritarian, India is a free, open democracy. If China curbs its media, curbs free speech and expression, curbs basic fundamental rights, in India, fundamental rights are protected. In India, if we have limited state control, and in China, on the other hand, you have almost complete state control, totalitarian state control, be it in the markets, be it with regard to basic rights. Chinese state control is omnipresent. But however, what is unique about China is that though politically it is authoritarian, it is communist extremist regime, economically China has embraced capitalism. It has embraced, at least to some extent, free markets, encouraging private investments, encouraging large scale industries, pushing for a manufacturing led growth. But the overall narrative is controlled by the political establishment, that is the Communist Party of China. So, despite our political, economic, and social and cultural differences, one thing which is common between India and China is the need for development for both the countries. China is still on its way to become a developed nation, but it has achieved something remarkable in the last 30 years. India is on the same path, trying to solve its socio-economic problems, addressing its developmental issues on a war footing. So this is something that is in common for India and China. So it's natural for India and China to work together, to collaborate, to come together, because there are plenty of opportunities when India and China work together with focus being on development of each other. This reminds me of a very popular statement that was made by former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. When Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister, he had stated that India China need not be rivals. The world is large enough to accommodate the rise of India and China, which meant that there is enough space, geopolitical space in the world to allow the rise of India China. We need not be automatic rivals, natural enemies of each other. We can, in fact, collaborate and work together. And there is a history to this. If you look at the era from 1988 to 2009, believe it or not, during this period, India China made genuine attempts to work together to help each other and partner with each other, despite all the existing differences. I'm not saying there were no issues, issues were present. Same border issues were present. Chinese aggression was also present. But we found common ground in other areas where we started working together, starting with the visit of then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, then followed up by the visit of PV Narasimha Rao. India opened a new chapter in its ties with China. We came out with border agreements in 1990s. We created a standard protocol to resolve these minor border incursions and skirmishes at the border level and keep those localized incidents at the local level itself without allowing it to escalate to affect the broader relationship between India and China. Then came the historic visit of Prime Minister Vajpayee to China, which opened a new chapter in the relationship. India China started collaborating in their economic ties. India started procuring basic raw materials and key intermediaries which were needed to power the rise of the Indian economy. China became one of the key supplier of essential intermediary products and raw materials, which was essential for India's growth. India also started stepping up its trade with China, and that mutual dependency started. Even diplomatically, at global organizations, at regional organizations, India and China were actively working together, collaborating with each other. For example, we would work together at World Bank and IMF to oppose the West. We jointly established groups like the BRICS. India would eventually join the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, work with China to counter the West, the Western dominance over global banking and financial institutions. Then, even at the Climate Change Convention, the UNFCCC, India China had a common position. We were even part of a group called the Basic Group of Countries with Brazil and South Africa that were pushing the voice of the developing and underdeveloped countries. India, China together were giving a voice for the global south at the climate change talks, and we jointly championed the CBDR principle, common but differentiated principles, or the common but differentiated responsibilities that was pushed into the climate change convention. It was the effort of both India and China. So there were many such platforms where India and China were working together, collaborating with each other, helping each other, while we still had standing differences and disputes. So the writer is saying, despite our existing differences, there are many opportunities for us to work and collaborate with each other. Because see, what China has achieved is something remarkable, something India can learn from, something India can gain from. Recently, the Communist Party of China, it held its fourth plenary session of the Central Committee members. Central Committee is one of the top decision-making bodies within the Communist Party. During this plenary session, they have adopted the 15th five-year plan. China follows a planned model of development as a communist socialist state, and it is building upon the success it has seen under the 14th five-year plan. See, the 15th five-year plan is built to cater to the future growth trajectory of China. Today, China is a $20 trillion economy. So it is nearly four times the size of the Indian economy. If you look at per capita income stands at $13,000, which places China in the upper middle income category. that clear? Its per capita income is $13,000 for 2 consecutive years. That shows the success of the 14th five-year plan, and China is trying to further build upon this. So it is a upper middle income country. It is listed within the top 10 of Global Innovation Index. Shows China's focus on research and development, scientific innovation. It is focusing on cutting edge technologies from semiconductors to electronics to clean renewable energy to artificial intelligence. China built its economy on the power of its manufacturing, and today it is focusing more on innovation. China has made a seamless transition from being the manufacturing powerhouse of the world to becoming the innovation hub of the entire world. And there are lessons for India, and India can gain from China's growth story. Believe it or not, today, 157 countries in the world, they consider China amongst their top three trading partners. That includes India as well. For India, China is the biggest trading partner in most of the years compared to any other country. Sometimes US has overtaken China as far as India's trade is concerned, but in most years China is our number one trading partner. China occupies this position within the top 3 for 157 countries of the world. That shows China's dominant economic position. So there are mutual areas where we can help each other, common interests that we have in the economic domain itself. See, for example, India has a big strength in service based industries, IT and software industry, for example. Or India has a big strength in biotech. We have a strength in pharma. These are some strength areas of India where India can contribute to China. Indian companies can invest in China, create opportunities for China as well. There are many, many sectors where China can help India. Take, for example, electronics or clean and renewable energy. Today, more than 60% of China's energy requirement is met from the clean renewable sector. It's a leading solar power, it's a leading power in electric vehicles and battery technology. So, this is where China can help India, can work with India. Same with artificial intelligence. So, there are many sectors where China can benefit the Indian economy. Chinese investments, Chinese companies, Chinese expertise can be valuable for India's growth story. And vice versa, it's mutual. There are sectors where Indian expertise, Indian companies can contribute to Chinese economy. These complementarities which exist is what can power the future relationship of India and China. Of course, the writer is looking at the positive side. He's being an optimist. But the writer says that you can keep the issues aside, the existing issues, let them be dealt with separately. Those issues need not affect the broader relationship, which can actually benefit both the countries. Because, see, there is a history of India China being together. Even before the concept of nation states came up, even before today's India, today's China existed, long before that, the great Indian civilization and the great Chinese civilization, they have been interacting with each other for more than 2000 years. We share a civilizational partnership with China that predates the very concept of nation states. Today, we may have boundary disputes. We have fought a war in the past. We have standing border conflicts. But there was a time where the two great civilizations were working with each other, helping each other, and enabling each other. Look at the history of cultural ties between India and China. Look at how Buddhism traveled from India to China to become a major faith in China today. Look at the history of trade since ancient medieval times between Indian kingdoms like the Cholas, Pandyas, for example, the Pallavas, and the trade linkages they had with the Song dynasty in China, the Ming dynasty in China, through the South China Sea, through the Strait of Malacca. So there's a history of rich collaboration. There has been a history of exchange of technology as well in the past, from fishing methods to shipbuilding technology, or something that was shared hundreds and hundreds of years ago between the people of India and China. So there is that history that binds us together. There is a soft power element. Even today in modern China, India does have a unique soft power which we can't ignore. For example, yoga. is widely popular in China. Bollywood movies. Look at how Amir Khan's movies have performed in China. They have been blockbusters, right? So there is a lot of scope and potential to build people to people relations, cultural ties, which should be at the foundation of any partnership. And don't forget, this would be a partnership between two of the most populous countries in the world. Recently, India China have opened a new a new dimension in their relationship. They managed to end some of the differences they had with regard to the Ladakh standoff, and India China have started resuming normalcy in their relationship. So we have restarted direct flights between India and China. It can help Indian students who are studying in China. It can help Indian businessmen and traders. Then we also have restarted the Kailash Manas Sarovar Yatra, sacred pilgrimage for Hindus, facilitated by the government of India and China. Issuing visas have restarted. India has started issuing visas to Chinese nationals. So people to people relations, cultural ties are improving. So this article comes at a crucial time. I mean, the timing of this article by the Chinese Consul General is very important. It comes in the backdrop of the recent issue involving an Indian citizen from Arunachal Pradesh. I'm sure you must have heard of this incident where an Indian woman from Arunachal Pradesh working abroad was traveling through China for a business meeting in Japan. And she was detained by Chinese immigration, harassed by Chinese immigration because her place of origin was Arunachal Pradesh. So, following this, there was a diplomatic uproar. India objected to the mistreatment of Indians because there is a history to this as well. In the past, China used to give stapled visas to Indians from Arunachal Pradesh and even Indians from Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, as China saw them as disputed territories. And India has always objected to this, protested against this very strongly. So now that India has raised its voice against this mistreatment of Indians from Arunachal Pradesh, because Arunachal Pradesh is an integral part of Indian territory, India has clearly reaffirmed its claims on Arunachal Pradesh, and it has directed China not to discriminate against Indians. It has even issued a warning to Indians traveling to China to be careful while traveling to China. So maybe this article is coming in that context. Article from the Chinese establishment, right? Which means there is state approval, there is approval from the Communist Party, which is a sign that maybe this incident was a one off incident. It was not deliberate. It was not as if there were orders from the higher authorities to detain this Indian citizen from Arunachal Pradesh and harass them. Maybe it was a one off incident and China is trying to mend the damage which has been caused. And maybe this article is one way of doing it, right? As I said, when serving diplomats write such articles, it won't be without the blessings of the leadership. They can't deviate from the party line, particularly in the case of China. So it's a clear sign that China is, in a way, apologetic of what happened. And they're trying to, in a way, show the prospects that exist for India China collaboration and partnership. That's why this article holds a lot of significance. Now, coming to the next topic, on page 10, there's a detailed article by the Hindu on neurotechnology. This topic can be very important for prelims. It can even be important for mains. You can expect maybe a 10-mark question. What is neurotechnology? What are its applications? What are the concerns related to neurotechnology? Which countries are the leading powers in neurotechnology? This is something you need to understand. So, neurotechnology focuses on brain computer interface. It's about interconnecting the human brain with a computer and a mechanical device to achieve certain objectives, to understand brain signals, to read the sensory stimulation that happens in our brain, and use the stimulation to operate equipment, electronic and electromechanical equipment. Such technology that brings the human brain into a direct interface with a man made computer and an electromechanical device. This field of technology is called neurotechnology. See, human brain is clearly one of the most complex organs that we have uh, ever seen, and Humans have still struggled to understand the functioning of our complex neural systems. But today, brain research has really advanced, and there are tools available, technologies available today to better read brain signals, to develop sensors which can capture those signals and turn them into real world action using electromechanical equipment, using computing and mechanical equipment. For example, let's say a patient who has been paralyzed because of an accident, whose spinal cord has been damaged, or a patient suffering from Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, or a patient suffering from motor neuron disease, right, who has become paralyzed and immobile. So, by planting these implants, these electrodes, either inside the human brain or on the top of the head to read those signals and process the signals, understand the signals, and use a set of electromechanical computing equipment to help that individual achieve mobility. That is the true application of neurotechnology. Let's say someone who can't walk, who has been disabled because of an accident, if they can operate a wheelchair on their own, and let's say if they can communicate, if they can operate a computing device just through their brain signal, let's say they can't lift their hand, right? Someone who's paralyzed like this, if they are enabled to operate machinery, they can operate machinery through a computer interface. Now that is revolutionary. That is a big breakthrough, right? Because this can help uplift the lives of lakhs of people across the world who suffer from paralysis, who suffer from Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, motor neuron conditions. And this is a game changer in the field of healthcare, right? It can even help rewire the brain chemistry. It can even help influence the brain function. So there are numerous applications in the healthcare sector because of neurotechnology, the brain computer interface, which is being pioneered across the world. It can help treat many conditions. It can improve the quality of life for those who are disabled, for those who are paralyzed, those who are suffering from such conditions which makes them immobile, those who can't speak, right? Those who can't uh, perform any day-to-day function because of their disability. If there is a computer interface which can read their brain signals, synthesize that, process that, and turn that into electromechanical action, and through a computer, if they can control equipment, that will be transformative for that particular patient. So this breakthrough technology is what we call as neurotechnology. So there are many applications in the civilian domain, the healthcare sector. Is that clear? But the same technology in the wrong hands can be potentially misused. There are researchers working on the military applications of brain computer interface, of connecting these implants to the brains of soldiers to sort of make them like a super soldier, right? It's not the stuff of science fiction. A real possibility where a soldier can be connected with a machine to improve their efficiency, their ability to deal with the combat environment. Now, this raises serious ethical concerns. It raises ethical questions about the misuse of such powerful technology. Because, as I said, brain computer interface today, it not only reads brain signals and translates that into electromechanical action, it can work the other way. From the outside, you can control someone's brain function through a brain computer interface today. And that's where the technology is headed in the future. So, someone with those implants, what if their brain function is altered? What if the technology is misused to make someone commit some actions which they don't want to commit? That's where it enters a legal gray area. It enters a ethical a space where the dilemma comes up about the misuse of this technology, the concerns related with the abuse of this technology. So this technology is a very sophisticated technology that lies at the intersection of artificial intelligence, neurosciences, and advances in computing and mechanical engineering. So this is a technology that lies at the intersection of these three, right? Today with machine learning algorithms, these tools, these brain computer interfaces are becoming smart. They can learn on their own. And advances in neurosciences is helping in developing better implants. You don't even need a surgery today to plant those sensors and implants to receive the brain signals. And with advances in computing and mechanical sciences, it has become possible to achieve what was unthinkable few decades ago. So this is where there's a lot of opportunity and there is concern on both sides. So if you look at countries that are really advanced stage when it comes to brain computer interface, at the number one position, it is the United States, which clearly takes the lead position. There are many public funded research teams in the US working on brain computer interfaces. They have successfully demonstrated the technology. There are many American startups and private companies. For example, the company Neuralink. I'm sure many of you would have heard of it, which is owned by Elon Musk. It has made some big advances in the field of brain computer interface. Such powerful technology in the hands of few, which is controlled by few companies, few billionaires, or few countries, raises the prospect of the abuse and misuse of the technology as well. After US, the next leading power would definitely be China. US and China are the leading powers when it comes to neurotechnology. But India is not far behind. India is also making some strides in the field of neurotechnology. For example, the National Brain Research Center, which is located at Manesar, has successfully developed tools from neurotechnology. It has created very successful brain computer interface models. Then the Indian Institute of Science in Bengaluru, the IISc, which has a dedicated brain research center, has also made some rapid advances in the field of brain computer interface. The IITs, so all these public sector organizations are focusing on innovation, research, and development in the field of neurotechnology. Today, we have few private startups which are also coming up. Because don't forget, India is a leading power in biotech, and some of the biosciences uh, based startups and companies are venturing into neurosciences and neurotechnology as well. So there is a lot of scope for India to focus on neurotechnology, but it requires consistent support from the government. It requires more incentives and funding, requires the right facilities and infrastructure to be facilitated by the government. But however, the ethical concerns will have to be addressed. So you would need a policy in this regard, which can enable the positive opportunities that get created, like treating paralyzed patients, providing these advantages to those suffering from conditions which makes them immobile. Their lives can be transformed completely. So it's a healthcare priority. At the same time, there should be certain guidelines and regulations to prevent the abuse and misuse of such dangerous technology. Just understanding the basics of neurotechnology can help in your prelims and mains. Next, on page 15, there's an article that focuses on the tax devolution in the country, the horizontal tax devolution, which is often quite controversial. See, when it comes to devolution of funds from center to states, we have vertical devolution, which is the share that the center gives to all the states cumulatively, as recommended by the Finance Commission, and horizontal devolution as to how much will each state get out of this divisible pool. So recently, the Finance Ministry has submitted some data to the Rajya Sabha. It has submitted data to the Rajya Sabha based on a question that was asked that highlights the difference between the tax revenue contributed by a state and the devolution that it actually received from the center. This is what the data tells us. How much did each state contribute to the divisible pool of taxes? What was their total tax revenue contribution? And in return, how much devolution did they get? What's the difference between the two? When you take a state like Uttar Pradesh, UP contributed just 4.6% to the tax revenue from 2020 to 2025. During those 4 to 5 years, Uttar Pradesh, which is the largest state, the most populous state, has contributed 4.6% to the tax revenue. But can you guess how much it has received in return? It has received a staggering 15.8%, meaning it has received more than what it contributed. Now, contrast this with a state like Maharashtra. Maharashtra contributed 36.1% to the tax revenue, which is a massive contribution. In return, it has received only 6.65% of the tax devolution. So for Maharashtra, there's a huge negative difference. So some states like Karnataka, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Goa, even Haryana, these states have contributed more tax to the divisible pool of taxes, whereas they have received less in return through horizontal devolution. For example, for Karnataka, the difference between the two is around 8.8 percentage points. Like this, for Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Goa, Haryana, there is a negative difference, meaning they've contributed more tax to the tax revenue, received less in devolution. Whereas states like UP, even Bihar, they contribute less, but they receive more in devolution. Now, there are two ways of looking at this data. The data itself is a source of controversy. One way of looking at this is that the more advanced states, the faster developing states, they are helping the laggard states, which are falling behind, in the spirit of nation building, in the spirit of national unity, integration, in the spirit of fraternity. One larger state, which is quickly progressing, like Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, they are helping states like UP, Bihar, which are all part of the Indian Union. One region helping the other, one state helping the other to progress together as a nation, which is what nation building is all about. Right? You can't expect every state to have the same performance. You can't expect a state like UP, Bihar, let's say, which are dealing with serious socio-economic challenges, to have the same contribution as Maharashtra or Tamil Nadu. Right? It's a duty of every other region and state to contribute to nation building and uplift the other states which are relatively backward. So that's one way of looking at it, which justifies this difference. But there's another viewpoint. The other viewpoint is that there is a political discrimination going on in the country. That states which are performing well, states which are contributing more to tax revenue, are being discriminated. They're getting less tax devolution. Whereas states which are falling behind, they are being rewarded because of their size, because of their political weight, the political leverage they have with the central government. That's the argument which comes up. That's why there is a lot of criticism from states like Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and others regarding the terms of the Finance Commission, which uses the size of the state, the population of the state, and other parameters to decide on the devolution, which automatically favors the relatively backward states. So, this data itself is a source of controversy. There are different ways of looking at it. I presented to you both of them. So, just be aware of the difference that exists. Which are the top states contributing to tax revenue? Which are the top states receiving maximum horizontal devolution? This data will help you understand that. Next, fresh fighting has broken out between Thailand and Cambodia. Earlier this year, Thailand, Cambodia fought a brief conflict over their border dispute. The border dispute is centered around a very old ancient Shiva temple, the Priya Vihar temple, that's located along the disputed border. This Shiva temple, the Priya Vihar temple, which marks its link with India and Hinduism, points towards India's cultural and soft power links that dates back to hundreds of years ago in this region. The same temple here, the Priya Vihar temple, and the region surrounding it, the mountain area surrounding it, is the source of a border dispute between Thailand and Cambodia. Earlier this year, it escalated into a conflict. Both sides started attacking each other, firing artillery, carrying out airstrikes, launching drones. More than 43 people were killed on both sides, including several soldiers from the Thai army and Cambodia. The more than 3 lakh people in the region were displaced, and it was threatening to escalate into a big conflict in Southeast Asia. But later, Donald Trump intervened, and President Trump acted as a mediator and had worked out a ceasefire. He had brought about a ceasefire between Thailand and Cambodia, and he went on bragging about this, that he's the leading negotiator of the world, just like he falsely claimed of mediating between India Pakistan. Here, he was bragging about his role in bringing this conflict to an end. And Trump indeed played a role, at least in this case. But the point is, now that fresh fighting has broken out, fresh attacks have resumed from both sides. There are reports of airstrikes from one side, launch of drones from the other side, and five people have been killed again. So there is a possibility that the ceasefire will break down and fresh conflict might break out. Now, this highlights the limitations of Trump's negotiating power. Because, see, Trump claims to have mediated multiple ceasefire agreements from Africa to Asia, right? He's been claiming that he's the leading negotiator of the world and he was desperately craving for a Peace Prize as well. But the point is, when you use only your leverage to force two countries to come to a settlement to end a war, such ceasefires will not last because you're not addressing the root causes. So, can you guess how Trump convinced Thailand and Cambodia to end this conflict? By using America's leverage on Thailand and Cambodia, which is its money power, its influence, its trade. Because Thailand, Cambodia, as small Southeast Asian countries, are dependent on US for markets, for funds, for as well as American military presence in the region. So, using that leverage, Trump was almost blackmailing these countries to step back and end the conflict and sign a ceasefire agreement. He has done the same with Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda, which we studied the other day. He has done the same with many other countries, saying that he has worked out a ceasefire by basically threatening them by using America's influence as a leverage. But this ceasefire will never last because it is not addressing the root causes. The root causes which triggered the conflict. It could be an ethnic issue. It could be a genuine post-colonial issue. There could be a border dispute present. If those ground issues are not addressed, how will the conflict come to an end? It will only re-emerge in few months or few years, and the ceasefire will break apart. That's what is happening here now with Thailand and Cambodia. The ceasefire, which held for few months, has now started falling apart with fresh fighting breaking out between the two sides. Now, coming to the last topic under the prelim section, the opposition parties led by the India bloc, they are looking to impeach a high court judge. It brings up the topic of removal of judges from high court and supreme court. The constitution doesn't use the word impeachment, but popularly the process of removal of a high court or supreme court judge is referred to as impeachment by the media. So, in a recent case involving a judge from Madras High Court who was part of the Madurai bench, a controversial order was passed by this judge, Justice G.R. Swaminathan, who was part of the Madurai bench of the Madras High Court. He passed a ruling where he ordered that a Hindu custom ritual to be performed at a dargah. In Tamil Nadu, there is this famous Subramaniam Swami temple where there is a dargah situated nearby. So, this is a source of communal tension as well. And the justice in concern who was dealing with the matter ordered a Hindu custom ritual to be performed at the dargah on this hilltop. Now, this is seen as against the ethos of the judiciary, enforcing one religious practice on the other community. And based on this, the opposition parties are trying to push for the removal of this judge based on this controversial order. That's the context. But what's the process of removal of a judge? See, in the Indian Constitution, we have Article 124 and 217 that deal with removal of a judge. 124 is for Supreme Court, of course. 217 is for High Court, respectively. The Constitution says that the president, who's the appointing authority of these judges, can remove a judge on the grounds of proven misbehavior or incapacity. But the Constitution doesn't define what exactly is proved misbehavior or incapacity. It doesn't explain the process of removal of a judge. This is done through a law passed by the Parliament, the Judges Inquiry Act 1968. This law defines what is the exact process of a removal of a judge, which is in line with the constitutional provisions of Article 124 and 217. So, if the process has to be initiated, right, there is a minimum requirement which has to be met. A motion for removal of a judge, if it is introduced in Rajya Sabha, at least 50 MPs of Rajya Sabha should sign the motion. If it is pushed in the Lok Sabha, at least 100 MPs of Lok Sabha should sign the motion. That's the minimum support required. And once the motion is introduced, it can be accepted or rejected by the chairperson. That is the speaker in the Lok Sabha or the chairman of the Rajya Sabha, who's obviously the vice president of India. So they can either accept the motion or reject it based on circumstantial evidence and prima facie arguments that are available. They can either accept the motion to be admitted or reject it entirely. If it is rejected, it will fall apart. If accepted, then a process kicks in. Once the motion is accepted, a three-member inquiry committee is constituted, which will be headed by a Supreme Court judge, a High Court judge, and a distinguished jurist. This inquiry committee will investigate the charges brought up against the judge. It could be on the grounds of corruption, or it could be with regard to their integrity, or willful misconduct, or lacking the moral turpitude. On these grounds, let's say a judge has taken bribes, or a judge lacks integrity while dealing with cases, or a judge is proven to be biased, one sided, and lacking the moral turpitude to uphold the independence of the judiciary. On these specific grounds, following the inquiry, right, the motion will be taken up for voting in the parliament. During the inquiry, the judge can present their case as well. Inquiry committee will look at the evidence available, and the judge in question can present their case as well. And finally, if the committee recommends the removal, right, because if the committee says there is no proved misbehavior or incapacity of the judge, the motion will fall apart. But if the committee upholds the removal process, then the motion is taken up for voting. And the voting requires majority of the total membership of the House and two-thirds majority of members present and voting. It requires a special majority. Once it is passed by both houses with special majority, the president will have to sign the removal order of the judge in question. So this is what we have to study from today's newspaper. I hope you guys have understood all the key topics. If you like the session, do press the like button and let me know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That's it. Thanks for watching.